So we going to an eye doctor in Belgium. He know nothing of the disease. Okay, it's like that. Your son is blind. You must keep him. That was the answer of the doctor. So our search begin.
Did you let yourself hope that Yana could get vision then?
No, never. Because when 100 doctors say there is no cure, there is no cure, and then there is one doctor who say, I know a cure. You think the other 100 doctors are wrong, and one doctor have it on the right end. So you are skeptical.
I was diagnosed when I was 27, and I didn't know at the time how severe it was, because the person who diagnosed me, an ophthalmologist in New York City, he told me that I had retinitis pigmentosa, and that gradually I would go blind and probably have useful vision till I was in my 60s. And I was, 26, 27 then, and that seemed like forever, so I sort of put it behind me. I didn't think that was something I had to worry about right away.
What's the best thing you've seen since you saw better?
Vooral de kleur van een oog van de kerels gewoon.
It's a difficult question, because in the beginning I was wondering about everything I saw. Even a simple thing I saw, and before I didn't see it, so it was a miracle. But the most beautiful thing and wonderful thing is the color of eyes.
I recently read a wonderful article about how happiness is at least as much anticipation as it is what you end up doing. If you set up things and you anticipate them, they may turn out to be better in the anticipation than they were in the reality, but the anticipation gives us happiness. So yes, I think hope is tied to happiness. It's Emily Dickinson, the bird that perches, the thing with feathers that perches in the soul.
I had lost all my night vision. I couldn't drive at night. I couldn't move around very well. And then in 1970, my day vision started to go. I could almost notice one day to the next some change.
You know, at that time, it was really hard to figure out what was going on. There wasn't much information out there. Doctors didn't seem to know. And as it got to be worse, he had a hard time figuring out exactly what it was.
I had an instance where a family doctor, I went to see him and he looked in my eyes, he talked with me about it, he said, you know, I think you ought to see a psychiatrist. So I did, and the psychiatrist, after several sessions, said to me, well, Gordon, you're like everybody else, you know, with a mouthful of teeth. Some of them aren't as good as the rest of them. But I don't think that's your problem. I think you should see an ophthalmologist.
But I felt I had to tell him the truth, that he had his own life to lead, a second child on the way. And I remember even saying, you know, if you have time and there's any part of the world you haven't seen, see the world. Retinal degenerations in 1970, on some level, were considered rare diseases. Part of the rareness was that people went to a hospital, were told they had the problem, there was no hope, and they should just go home. And so many people with RP were naturally feeling very lonely and wondering if anybody was interested in their problem.
What struck me was how little knowledge there was about these diseases. And so as we looked around more and more frenetically to try and find a way to slow or stop the progress, I found dead end after dead end. I had a faith healer who worked with me for a time in England. You know, what the heck? I was in London, I'd try it.
There was someone who did There's 100 bee stings, 5 days a week.
Some people thought that transplanting muscles on the back of the eye to increase the circulation might help. There was a theory that if you cut the sympathetic fibers in the neck, you would dilate the vessels on that side of the head and perhaps improve the blood flow.
Well, and then there was Russia.
An article placed in New York Times by the Filatov Institute, located in Odessa, Russia, purported to have a cure for retinitis pigmentosus. Gordon, having seen the article, called Elliot Burson and asked if he thought if it had any real merit.
There had been an attempt with placental extract in the Soviet Union to try to save function, and although it didn't have a proven scientific track record, I believe as a compassionate human being, every person should have a chance to try things, even if it's, so to speak, a last Hail Mary pass, as we would say.
I think it's human nature to always want something to hang on, to hope for, and that was certainly my case. And I'd build it up in my own mind that this treatment might be the answer. It was the only one left.
I think I would say that it was really a leap of faith and kind of what he thought at the time, again, family lore, was that it was a treatment that would work.
He didn't know about the timing, when it would happen. He'd worked with the State Department, and they were trying to clear it. It was a difficult time in the Cold War. He got the approval to go, and then of course it coincided with Zach having just been born. My brother Graham very kindly took me over. Luli had just had Zachary, our youngest son, and just a few weeks before. Unfortunately, I did get to see him before I lost all of my sight, and I'll never forget that. It's very important to both of us.
The plan was to go to the Filatov Institute for a 4-day regimen of injections, but when he arrived, he found out that the stay would be much longer.
Gordon had said he would call me right away when he got there. And then I went 4 days and thinking he'd be home even by then without hearing. And so I think the panic, I really got scared that something awful had happened.
The intended 4-day stay at the Filatov Institute in Odessa evolved into a harrowing yet transformative 6-week journey.
That was a very important time in my beginning to learn to deal with blindness. I couldn't even find my way to the bathroom, just to give you an idea of, and the place was in pretty bad shape. I mean, the walls had crumbling paint. It had bare light bulbs hanging down from the ceiling. It hadn't had a lot of attention. He was in a room where there were, it was like our single room in the hospital. I think there were 8 beds. They were all just jammed in. There was urine all over the floor. It was kind of grim. So I had 12, 15 injections a day, and I had them in my temples. They were in my buttocks and my shoulders and shoulder blades. There was a particular woman that gave them what they were called injeccies, the shots, and we had just started bombing Hanoi, and so she would say Yexi and say Vietnam, and hit him with the needle. I think I was just amazed. We were at the mercy of whatever they did.
I think after, it was a 6-week time he was in Russia, and I think he just sort of said, by 3 weeks in, with these shots to the temple and everything, and he's like, what am I doing here?
And so I went over to join him and help him come home. It was frightening. I think the fact, not just that he'd lost weight, but his color was pale. I just thought, oh goodness, this isn't a good place to be. No, we got to get home.
When Luli came over and I had left, he went into a coma. She was very afraid he'd be given something which would make things worse. So he finally came out of the coma, and then they decided maybe it was, they'd done everything they could.
I think he had hope when he went to Russia, but he lost hope.
I think he literally lost it that month in Russia?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
After all failed attempts to find a cure, Gordon is left to figure out how and where he fits in.
The kind of stereotypical view that blindness meant you had no other value to offer.
You have to put it in the context of the time, and that, you know, your image of a blind person at the time is not somebody who's out there doing a lot of stuff, especially if you've been the guy who's out there doing a lot of stuff.
Of course, very much at the top of it all is my relationship with my trophy bride that I married in 1966, and happily I married my trophy bride the first time around because we're still married 47 years later, despite the fact that blindness came in and imposed a whole different set of dynamics on our relationship.
Well, Gordon wouldn't be who he is without Luli. He might not be. That's elaboration enough.
At the very beginning, I kept wanting to say, you know, oh, it's going to be okay. It'll be fine.
The relationship with my mother had a lot to do with keeping him afloat during that time.
And then I remember one evening saying to him, you know, I thought hard about it. And it would really annoy me to have somebody sitting with me every evening say, oh, it's going to be okay.
My mom's telling him that things would be all right, I think is, for a long time, is probably part of human nature, right? So if you love someone, you want them to know that it's going to be all right. But I also think, you know, you hear this about addiction and things like that, where people have to first recognize that they have a disease before they can move ahead. So if she was constantly telling him he'd be okay, I don't think they were able to really get past it. And so when part of the whole process was saying, you know, yeah, it's a crappy deal.
Well, there was a point where Luli went to Gordon, and Luli said to Gordon, you know, you can decide whether you're going to live with blindness or not. And if you wanted to go out and shoot yourself, you could do that. But if you decide you're going to live with blindness, you live with it. And I will support you 100%.
And I remember saying to him, I think it's a really, really bad deal. Not even that delicate a word, but, you know, if it's more than you can stand, I understand that. But if you can stand it and want to move ahead, let's go for it. And then just let's believe it's going to work.
It changed his view on what he could be in life. And I think that was, so if Russia is the bottom, this is the start of the rise.
For me, he was the most dramatic, you know, example of hope. I mean, not just hope, but he never did get his sight back, but didn't stop him. He was hugely successful. He enjoyed the things in his office and the view, even though he couldn't see it, but he could describe it to you in detail. And I began to think, oh, blind doesn't mean just a black and white life. Where, you know, I had been told that to help Gordon get all white shirts and dark suits so he could match it together.
I think it was one of those where that meeting and getting to know him planted a seed that over time developed into this idea of, wait, I can do this.
I think he hopes to find a cure to retinal degenerative diseases, full spectrum, all of them. And I think that's his, I know that that's the biggest accomplishment for him, that he could achieve. And that's the one that he holds out there.
We got very lucky early on. We had not only a rallying cry, which was the first multidisciplinary laboratory for the study of these diseases. There wasn't any such thing then, even though there were a lot of disciplines that played into this.
The theory behind the lab is that more would be done by a group of scientists working together with different disciplines than anyone could do by themselves.
The field was really barren when we started. The landscape had no one else in it, and we just plugged away at it. And so we had to start from the beginning and bring in people, attract them in with career development awards and postdoc fellows. And as we started raising money for that, we began to understand how many people out there were desperate for this same kind of opportunity, for this kind of research, and for the result of it. We got inspired by them.
Gordon's fierce determination and dedication to this foundation was motivated by the pure desire that no one else should go through what he did when he was told that he was going to go blind.
A big reason why the foundation from the very beginning was really strictly dedicated to scientifically based research is if we were going to offer that kind of hope, we had to do it from a base of scientific knowledge.
That's kind of everything in my mind, is the notion that suddenly what you thought your life was going to be is drastically different. And at the same time, you find a real purpose, which for him, throughout my life, has been this desire to find a cure.
I think what he has more than maybe he ever had was a sense that he has a real worth in the world, so that he won't ever have to answer to people and say, you're the rich guy who got the job at the chase, running the chase, or the guy who is doing this because of the wealth you had growing up. He can now say that he had a pretty lousy hand, and he was able to take that and create a foundation that's, I think, on the verge of curing blindness.
One of the things, though, that has always struck me, because I've met a lot of people who are blind, and in some cases blind and deaf, is I am in awe of what they do every day in their lives, and so that really inspires me, and it means that if I have the resources that I have, and I'm fortunate enough to have them, that I've got to do even more.
The foundation has always been willing to take chances on stuff a little outside the box, proposals a little outside the box. Sometimes it doesn't work, but other times it's a quantum leap in getting to the treatments and cures.
I think the news of a dog being able to see was exciting, because he could tell a lot of folks that, look, we're on the right track, and for all you people who've been with me for 30 years, we're on the right track.
That was really the moment where a lot of that hard work and those years and years of trying paid off, or at least gave the glimmer of hope that it was going to pay off.
It put a wind in everyone's sails as it related to the foundation. And you go to these events for the foundation, and they get old, but when you hear that, and that puts all these dinners and auctions and things in perspective, that the money went to finding a cure for blindness in a dog, and look what's come of that. So then now we're in human trials on a number of things, and that's just, that's really exciting.
Hard problems don't yield easily. Hard problems, take effort. It's that great Edison quote that most people miss opportunity because it's dressed in overalls and looks a lot like hard work, right? I think that's a great thing. It's a great example about Gordon. I mean, Gordon tends not to miss opportunities just because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like hard work. He tends to go towards those because he realizes that's where great accomplishments happen.
The years of FFB's efforts finally pay off in 2001 when Lancelot, a blind dog, regains his sight with gene therapy treatment.
To all of us here at Children's Hospital, one of the most exciting times in the Phase 1/2 study was the enrollment of one of the first younger subjects, a little boy who was 8 years old.
You aren't always able to extrapolate results from animal studies to human studies. So there was that little question mark, and of course, anxiety, maybe, particularly with a child. But it was a great story. It worked.
It feels almost biblical. And even when you're witnessing it, it's just, for me, a little hard to completely take in.
It's almost like you can taste it. I feel it. I mean, there are already some
So the
therapies out there
success
for
of
some
Lancelot
these
took them
diseases
further
that are
down the
really helping
road.
people.
Scientists began running
And there are
human
many
trials to
more,
remedy the same
really
gene
we're on the
defect that
threshold
caused
of
Lancelot's
tremendous number of
blindness.
breakthroughs. So-
But this time,
so
it
knowing
was in a
that
child.
is part of why I fight as hard as I do and why I continue to. I really feel we're on the cusp of making a huge difference to millions of people around the world.
So do I think that finding these treatments for the rare form of retinitis pigmentosa will have application elsewhere in society? Absolutely yes, and I can already give you significant examples where advances in treating retinitis pigmentosa are now being tried to treat brain disorders, are now being tried to treat hearing disorders. You're seeing a kind of flowing out from the specific forms of treatments to the whole world of now medical genetic diseases, which affect millions of people, and more complex diseases. So there's a tremendous almost you might call it the Velcro effect with the space program. We went to the moon and brought a couple rocks back, but we also brought all sorts of technologies to the planet which have transformed our lives. I think the same thing is happening in medicine through treatments of retinitis pigmentosa and treatments of inherited eye diseases in general.
I still maintain, and I think it's been true throughout the life of the foundation, that a rising tide lifts all the boats. And that's always been the case. If we can learn more about the retina and about the whole visual process, we're going to help everybody. We're going to go way beyond just one disease or another disease.
For me, the word hope has been replaced with the word promise, because we can see the end of the road now. We know we can affect these diseases. When Gordon first began with this, there was nothing. There was a shrug of the shoulders. And truly, he's the architect. He's the father of giving the experience to humanity that people can really change this world. It's not only the scientists that do it, but it's those that create the environment for these things to be done.
Everybody takes their own path when they are confronted with a particular obstacle in life, and a very hard obstacle to take on. Some people become bitter, some people become angry. Gordon went the other way. He saw it as a growth for him in his humanity.
He could have easily just done projects related specifically to him. He had plenty of money, resources to do that. A lot of people go that way. That's not unusual, but he didn't do that. So all of his honesty, integrity, forthrightness, perseverance, and intelligence he put together and say, I'm going to take this case as far as I possibly can. I'm going to invite as many people to become involved in it, and we're going to press and press and press for solutions.
Gordon believed from day one that there would be treatments. And if you know anything about human affairs, you know there has to be a linchpin. There has to be a single person whose drive makes that happen. And in this case, that single person is Gordon.
It takes a critical mass of organization and, frankly, motivation to get something like this going. And I give them all the credit in the world for getting us to where we are today.
And what is interesting is, whenever you met Gordon, whichever piece of his life you happen to be part of, he's universally described the same way. And anyone who overcomes difference and turns it somehow into a distinguishing part of their character that becomes part of their story, that then becomes part of other people's story, that then becomes this inspiring thing. I mean, being close to it is just, I don't know, it's a treat. I view my relationship with Gordon as being one of the more powerfully shaping relationships on what type of man I should try to be, rather than the type of man that I am.
Here he is. I don't even know if he knows his gene yet. And he certainly has not, to my knowledge at least, has not been involved in a clinical trial, which suggests that we still don't know enough about how to treat him. Yet he's so excited about hearing the progress with all of these other clinical trials, the Corey Haas story, all the other adults and children who are now being enrolled in other studies.
He has accepted this, and I don't, and it comes down to when we ask him whether he thinks he'll ever be able to see again, you know, or whether he's done this foundation, you know, to provide himself with hope that he might see. And he always deflects and says, no, it's really for the next generation. It's for the kids in the videos that you see when you go to these FFB events, these kids who are losing their sight, or the parents who are watching their kids lose their sight.
What are the needs that come from your particular set of circumstances? I would say it's a need for him to be the head of the Foundation Fighting Blindness. The need is to find a cure. The need is to heal. The need for all of us is to heal.
As far as my kids are concerned, truly I don't know if the answers will be there in time. But it will for my grandchildren and for the grandchildren of others. And the incredible part of it to me is once these things are accomplished, they're forever. They will never go away.